Hey, it's Ace, and if you haven't heard, the brand new Ace at Large podcast comes out every Thursday. And what the Ace at Large podcast is built around these days is the idea that you are not alone. Whatever you may be going through, whatever you may be dealing with, you are not alone. And what we need for the podcast is you. We need your stories, your ideas, your concepts. Tell us how you overcame something. Tell us what you dealt with in life and how you conquered it, because the idea is what you've dealt with in the past is going to make it easier for someone else to deal with whatever it is they might be going through. And that's something special. So you've got all the information down here below me on the screen. Contact me. Tell me about your story. Tell me about yourself. Tell me about what you've overcome. And we'll see if we can't provide others with the help that they need. All right. It's the Ace at Large podcast, available every Thursday, and I would love to hear from you.
This is the Radio Button Network. And this is the new Ace at Large podcast. Ace at Large podcast. Now, your host, Ace.
So you're here every week because you're experiencing something, going through something, have gone through something, and want to do something to feel like you belong. That's why this whole thing started. That's why the Ace at Large podcast became what it is, which is a place for you to come and know that whatever you are experiencing, whatever you are going through, you are not alone. And we are going to prove that today in the best possible way. I am so excited about what we have to share with you today on the Ace at Large podcast because it comes from something I asked you to do. Hey, share your stories, share your experiences, share what it is you want from the Ace at Large podcast. And that's exactly what's happened today, because I got a message from a guy who said, hey, I'm kind of coping with something, and I would like someone who's had an experience similar to mine. And I also happened to get a message from someone who has almost the exact same experience, as if it was meant to be. And here we are. Now, here's the thing. We're going to talk about, on a surface level today, drug addiction, how to overcome it. But my belief is all of these things that we're experiencing, there are some commonalities within this that we can all draw on, that we can all use to help us through whatever it is we're experiencing and going through, whether it's grief, a difficult relationship, divorce, drugs, alcohol, whatever. Because just the goodness, so to speak, within this story is enough to make you realize, hey, if this person can overcome what they've done, I can too. And maybe, no matter what it is you're experiencing, something in here will trigger an idea. Something about the story you're going to hear is going to help you figure a way out, figure a way over whatever it is you're going through in life. So I'm really excited because I want you to meet Evelyn Parrott. Thanks for coming.
Hey, thank you for having me.
And you sent me a message that said, hey, because I mentioned on the Ace at Large podcast a couple of weeks ago, I think, there were some things that I was looking for. I wanted to share people's stories. Mm-hmm. And a guy messaged me and said, I would love, because he's struggling with drugs. He said, I listen to your podcast every week. I would love to hear about somebody overcoming drugs because I'm trying to kick the habit and going through a difficult time, trying to keep myself on track.
Right. And
then literally a day later, maybe a couple of days later, you message me as a wonderful example of A, how bad it can be, and then B, how great overcoming that can be.
Sure.
So it's kind of like this was meant to be. So let's start with, which is going to blow your mind, what is it that you do today?
I work in the substance abuse field for Harmony Recovery Group. We have 8 facilities. I'm an outreach representative, a peer support specialist, recovery coach, and substance abuse counselor.
So your job is now helping people overcome.
Sure.
Because you are a textbook case of someone who's had to overcome drugs and alcohol, or just drugs?
Just drugs.
Okay. And how did it all start for you?
Well, I just had low self-worth. You know, when you're growing up as a child, you believe you have a childlike mind, so you can't make sense out of everything. So, like I like to tell people, you're born in this world a perfect baby. You know, you speak for the first time, everybody cheers you on. You go to the bathroom for the first time, you're a genius. And then like you take your first steps and you fall. No one says, hey, piece of crap, get back up. No one says that. They help you get back up and take your first steps. But as you grow up and you start going to school or other things happen, you start believing lies about yourself. And like, for instance, one thing that I dealt with was reading and spelling. And, teacher calls you on, in class to read, and you start to read and you fumble over your words and people laugh at you, and you think, well, something must be wrong with me. And then it goes and happens again. And then you're like, I'm really not that smart. And you start believing that. You believe lies about yourself,
right.
which leads you to, which led me at least to, using drugs and trying to find happiness in a euphoric feeling that wasn't really real.
What was your family life like? What was your home life like when you were middle school, high school? What age would you say first? What age would you say you started using drugs?
Well, I started partying probably around 17.
Okay.
Yeah. My parents are still married today. They're great parents, which all parents, I think, well, I shouldn't say all, but my parents tried the best they could, the best they knew how to. Yeah. But my dad is a Vietnam vet, so he brought some of that trauma into my childhood, and I think I took on some of that. But it was a part of my journey. It made me who I am,
So you start taking drugs at 17,
mm-hmm.
and when did it go from a little partying here and there to being, you were able to recognize, okay, I've got a full-blown addiction here?
Yeah, sure. In my 20s, when I found opiates, they really grabbed a hold of me. Most of the time, people that deal with addiction have a drug of choice, and that drug just made me feel, so much better about myself. I could do anything. I had the energy. It just gave me all these fake feelings. And that happened in my late 20s when I was choosing the wrong men in my life, choosing the wrong atmosphere, and just people altogether.
Was it just, here's one of the things I've always thought, outside looking in, and people that I've known that have had a drug problem, it seems like the life itself is exhausting.
It is.
Because every moment of every day seems like it's a battle, not just, I don't want to use drugs right now, but even things like the smallest tasks become a big thing because everything's got to be worked out around drugs.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you said you would, you sold drugs, you would lie, you would steal for your addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Give me an example.
So I would walk into a store and buy a chainsaw, for example, and then walk out with that receipt, walk right back in and grab that chainsaw and walk right back out the door to get it for free and take the first one back. So ultimately I had a free chainsaw to sell on the streets, I mean, it's unreal the things you do, and you justify it in your head, and you make, you tell you're such a good con artist that you're a professional con. You con your own self into believing your stuff, And it's just, it takes control of your life. It's exhausting. You're constantly searching. Before you go to bed at night, you want to make sure you have your drug for when you wake up in the morning so you can do your day. It just controls everything about you.
So when you went to bed at night, you would already know,
oh, yeah.
Okay, I need to put this here. So when I wake up, it's right here, ready to go.
For sure. And if I didn't have it, I wasn't going to work the next day, that's for sure.
When I was in college, I read a book. It's called Wired, about John Belushi.
Mm-hmm.
And it said that he would go to the great comedian from Saturday Night Live and movies, and who died of an overdose.
Mm-hmm.
And they explained how he would take cocaine and make sure that whether he was in a hotel or at home, that he had a little bowl and it was in a nightstand, and he would take straws and stick them together so that when he woke up first thing in the morning, he could just slide the drawer open and pull the straw to his nose and get a little snort of blow.
Oh, yeah.
Just to get himself up so he could get out of bed to circulate, because he was on that cycle of he would have to take all kinds of pills to bring himself down to go to bed. And then when he woke up, he really couldn't get going. And he would have to take coke just to get his day started again and get his body moving.
Sure, it was beside my bed, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But, I mean, no one says, hey, when they're a kid, they don't say, hey, when I grow up, I want to be an addict. I mean, it's just something that happens because you don't believe in yourself.
Now, were you I don't know if this is even the right term, but I've heard that were you a functioning addict? Like you had a job and
I did.
That kind of stuff? Okay.
Yeah.
And then most people had no idea?
No idea. I was very good at conning.
Using at work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
All the time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what would you say your habit was? Like what's how much a day was your habit?
A $200 habit a day at least, yeah, of opiates.
So you're starting out down $1,400 every week.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I have no idea where I got that money from. I mean, stealing, lying, and cheating, but yeah.
Wow. So you're working, and while you're at work, you're having to think, like, okay, when I leave today, I'm gonna do that chainsaw scam.
Or
That'll stop by or whatever.
Or sell $700 to $800 worth of pills a month. Hustle, things like that.
Man, so as bad as it was, you're what? You're
Now,
so you're still in your late 20s at this point.
yes.
At what point did you say, man, okay, I got to get something's wrong. I got to get this together and make a change?
Yeah. When I got pregnant for the second time, I was a single mom during this time. And
No, I'm sorry. When you were pregnant the first time, did you kick while you were pregnant or did you use while you were
I
pregnant?
used after.
Okay, so you managed to not use for 9 months, but then as soon as you had the baby, you went right back to using.
Well, yeah, I had my first daughter in young 20s, so I
Okay.
wasn't hardcore using my drug of choice then.
Okay, so you were still a party phase
Yes.
then, so you could just stop, and then but you went right back to it. Then it became a problem after
Yes.
her. Okay,
Yeah.
so you realize, okay, now I'm pregnant. I've got to stop.
Well, I just remember thinking that, I never had to worry about my parents using drugs as a child. I just didn't have that worry or concern, and that would suck, So I just decided I need to make a change. I got to do something. I'm tired of it.
Okay, and were you in a relationship at the time?
Yes, I was.
Okay, and was he using drugs also?
Oh, yes.
Did you tell him like, hey, like I got to stop this, and did you expect him to stop also?
I told him I had to stop, but he wasn't following behind me, so I had to pack his stuff.
And so that was the end of that. You had to get rid of him to keep it away from yourself. Mm-hmm. What's a tough decision to make when you're pregnant, isn't it?
Yeah, it's hard and it's emotional. Yeah, but you've got to know. I mean, once you get to that point, like you're just tired and you're over it. You've got to make the decision where there's no going back. You just got to make that choice.
So had you tried before to stop?
Yeah, I went to methadone clinics. I did Subutex, methadone. I would wait out in the parking lot and get more methadone from other clients that were in the clinic, stand in those lines, and then I would get Subutex, tried that route, but I would break it down and snort it and abuse it, so that wasn't working for me. Yeah.
So one day you decided, I'm done. Mm-hmm. And what is the first, after you and you decide to get rid of the boyfriend, he's got to go. Mm-hmm. Then you're all alone, you and your child, your first child, which seems like it's really scary to me. There's something about that would seem like I would be freaked out. Okay, I'm going to not only have a kid on my own, but oh, by the way, in the process of being pregnant, I've got to keep my job. Oh, and I got to kick this pesky opiate habit that I've got, which kind of dominates everything that I do on a daily basis. That just seems to be almost overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people find themselves like, okay, what do I do first? Well, I guess the first was the deciding I got to stop.
Right. Make the decision.
But then what? Like, what do you? It seems like you're all alone in the world. What do you do first after that?
Yeah, I reached out to my dad because I knew once I told my dad there was no going back. The truth was out. It was out to light, and
Okay.
he would hold me accountable. That's for sure. Yeah. So I called him and let him know, and I told him I needed to see a doctor, and so we got set up with a doctor, and he started me on a medication called Suboxone. It's the MAP program, Medication Assisted Treatment. And while I was on the medication, I knew that there was something underlining that was the issue, the real issue, because nobody wants to be on drugs. I mean, that's just not something you want to do.
So, like, subconsciously, there was a reason that you had turned to drugs and a reason you were using, okay.
Yeah, I
trying
just didn't
to fill
know what
some
it was.
void. You just didn't know what that void was.
Yeah, and I knew the people I hung out with and the people I chose to date were not like me. I knew that I would sit there and I'm like, why am I around these people? That it's just not, they're not like me,
Yeah.
I remember telling my therapist that on the first day, and he said, "You're very intuitive. You won't be here long." But yeah. So I did some research and found out about EMDR. It's called eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It's very quick and rapid therapy, and it changes the brain neurologically. And so I found an EMDR therapist and started EMDR.
But you know what I'm fascinated by? The thought process that, and maybe this is something that's fairly common in the recovery world. It's where I know very little about, just what I've read in books that rock stars have written, which is not really the best way to go at doing this. But the way you decided, okay, I've got to, who do I tell that I know there's no going back after that.
Right.
Like telling a friend who's also using, hey, I got a problem, I need to stop. That's not who's going to help you. But what a great idea. If I tell my dad, okay, now I've gone too far and it's out there, and I know this person will always keep track of me and make sure that I'm accountable. So it's like it's exposing yourself in a way.
Yeah, it's
to
telling
somebody
the truth.
to someone who almost would be like, what the hell? Almost to someone who's ashamed of you, so you can make them proud of you again, or something like that. In a weird way, it seems to me.
And I mean, he didn't even know what to do in that situation. He just knew. I just knew that he would do whatever it took.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and my mom as well, of course.
Sure.
But yeah. But I just knew that, I mean, still to this day, I'm 40 years old, and my dad's going to call me and see if I made it home all right. You know, like that's just the way it is, you know? So that's the person I told for sure, yeah.
So what did you find was the underlying issue in your life? What was the void that you were looking to fill all these years with drugs?
Yeah. Even as a substance abuse counselor, you know, I've been in this business over 6 years and at least, and I found this to be common with all the people I work with. That they, and it was the same with me, that I didn't feel like I was enough, either not enough to be a mother or not enough to be a partner or a wife or not enough as a daughter or not enough to have the career I want in the future. Just felt like one way or another, people don't feel like they're enough, you know? And then, and I mean, like I told you, we tell ourselves lies that we believe. So I had to overcome the belief of that I'm not enough, you know? And once I figured out that, a lot of things started changing. And, of course, I had to, you know, create rules for my life and boundaries, you know, make the familiar unfamiliar, the unfamiliar familiar, you know, just change things altogether. I'm not above the law, you know, things like that.
What was the scariest part of all the change? When you said you had to make new rules, set new boundaries, all of these things, what was the one, was there one that more than any you were like, oh, this is going to be the hardest thing to do?
Well, it was hard for me to get rid of my playmates and playgrounds because I was mainly playmates because I was thinking to myself, you know, some of these people I've known for years, but, you know, just because I'm at this point in life, why do they have to be at this point in life, you know? And so I made a decision within myself to tell everyone, you know, this is my choice that I've decided to get clean. And you can either support me and not bring it around me, not talk about it, or you'll be cut out of my life. And I ended up with 2 friends out of all that.
Really?
Yeah.
That's what I was wondering. How many people were, you know what? I get it. I understand. So only 2 turned out to be supportive.
Yeah.
So the second part of this story is such a great story of recovery and overcoming and the way you're moving forward in life. But was there a point, or rather, what would you say was the lowest point? Is there one moment that stands out? And here's why I ask. I knew a guy years ago. I was just telling the story to somebody the other day, and I've always been fascinated by this, who was a record executive. Mm-hmm. And he mentioned one time that he used to do drugs. He'd gotten off of it. And I was like, well, what was it that made you change? And he said, I can clearly see myself sitting in my living room smoking a joint. Mm-hmm. He goes, and my son was sitting across from me on the other couch. 2 couches faced each other. He said, and I see myself handing him the joint across the table, and he was 15 years old. And we were talking, and it wasn't the first time I had done it. He said, and suddenly, for some reason, that day, as I reached across and he reached for it, it occurred to me, oh my God, this is your son. What are you doing? Mm-hmm. What kind of a father are you? He said, and I pulled it back and sat back and thought, I've got to change my life. And he said that was the moment when he woke up and was like, I got to stop. We're not doing this anymore. I've got to go call somebody right now.
Right.
And get change. And he said, changed everything for him after that and how much better he's doing and all that. But was there a moment that you could look back on and go, God, that was the lowest point. I can't believe I did that.
Yeah, I had a lot of low points, but I remember being in my apartment, government-assisted apartment, and laying on my couch, and it would be like 2 or 3 in the morning. And I remember thinking about waking up my daughter, putting her in the car, and going to get pills from my dope dealer. And I thought, man, this is insane. I'm not going to do this. So I called my brother, and I said, I need you to come over here. I'm in so much pain. I'm getting ready to kick my foot through this window because of how much pain I was in from not having the drug, And he was a nervous wreck, but he came with his wife, and they just sat there and talked to me, all night. And I just made that decision then that it was going to change from there forward,
So you're on government assistance.
Mm-hmm.
You've told your dad,
Mm-hmm.
and he is going to, whatever means, we're gonna work on this.
Yes.
And
definitely.
change your life.
Yes.
You're pregnant.
Right.
What were you doing? Not specifically, but like, what type of job did you have? Was it
I was a hairstylist.
Okay, and so you were spending all day.
Well, I had a booth rented, so I could do what I wanted to.
Okay.
You know, yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, and you've decided I've got to make a change. Pregnant with a child,
Right.
all on your own because you've gotten rid of the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's the best part: how she went from government assistance, all alone with the child, pregnant with a second child, trying to kick this habit, to where she is today, is a really inspiring and inspirational story. That there's plenty in this story for everybody to latch on to, whatever you may be going through. And we'll get to that next.
There's more of the new Ace at Large podcast next.
Thank you.
The Ace and TJ family is always on your phone on the Papa John's Ace and TJ app. Available at the Apple App Store, Google Play, and Amazon Marketplace.
Welcome back to the new Ace at Large podcast.
So, although this is a story of someone overcoming drug addiction, which really happened because I was contacted by somebody and said, hey, I would love to hear somebody's story of overcoming drug addiction. There is plenty in here that I think is applicable to whatever it is you may be going through in your life. Evie is our guest, who is a member of the Ace and TJ radio family, who is now, I think it's technically an outreach representative, is that the proper term? For Harmony Recovery Group. She's a substance abuse counselor, a certified peer support specialist, and a recovery coach who, when we left off with her story, was late 20s, pregnant, already having one child, pregnant, alone, living on government and living in a government assistance apartment.
Medicaid, food stamps, all of it.
Everything. And you had told your father, hey, I'm addicted to opiates. I need help. Simply because that was the one person you knew, when I tell him, he will hold me accountable and force me to move forward in this.
Absolutely.
And again, all alone because she had gotten rid of the boyfriend that she lived with at the time.
Kid's father, the one I was pregnant with, father.
So it starts, we talked about before the break about it seems overwhelming. Was it just hard? Like when you woke up the first day, like, whew, okay, today's day one. Is it that mindset, or is it just moving all the time?
I was just determined and focused. You know, they say take it one day at a time, and that's what I did. And, you know, some people are against medication-assisted treatment, other people aren't, and that played a huge role in my recovery. I'm no longer on that medication, but it played a role because it took away the pain that you feel when you're physically addicted to opiates, so I could focus more on, you know, fixing the underlying issues and going towards my goals and things like that. But no matter whether you do medication-assisted treatment or not, I mean, you just have to take it one day at a time and have your eyes focused on the goal. I mean, in order to reach my goals in life, I stand by, you have to have a desire, a goal,
right.
Desire. Then you have to have a positive present statement that you say to yourself daily about that goal. And not I will or I'm gonna, it's I am, you know. And then you visualize yourself the way you want and what your goal is. You actually visualize yourself living a clean life, what that looks like.
Let me ask you, that's what I was going to ask. In your mind, every day, when you thought about, because it sounds like to me, if I'm misunderstanding, let me know, but it sounds like to me, maybe as part of a morning routine or something before you went to bed at night, I'm not sure when, but you would say this statement out loud. And then when you visualized what you would look like when you're alone, pregnant with a child, living on government assistance, food stamps, government assistance, housing and everything, what did you visualize your life to be?
Everything I have now.
Really?
Really. I visualized myself living on the lake. I visualized myself helping others. I literally visualized what I wore, the clients that I would help, what they would look like. And another important key to that is I attached the emotions that I would feel when I reached that goal. I literally would feel those emotions, proud, fulfilled, just literally feel those emotions. And I did it when I was going to bed at night because your subconscious is more open at night.
Okay.
I didn't realize that at the time, but that's when you had time to relax and wind down, and I could literally,
and it became part of your daily process of shutting down, so to speak.
Yep, every day.
Okay. So you make it through having your child, little girl?
Yes.
Right, you have 2 girls.
Yes.
And so throughout the process of being pregnant and having this child, you're just starting the process of getting yourself clean.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just having had 2 children and being around, my ex-wife during that process and everything, that in and of itself is difficult enough on the body and the psyche and all that. But with all this other going on, how difficult was it for you to begin this process and stay clean for those 9 months?
I mean, to be quite honest, I didn't focus on the difficult. I focused on my desire and what I wanted.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, anything that's worth having is going to be complicated sometimes. But, when you're going through difficult times and you can't handle it alone, then you reach out for support. And I had someone. I had my sister-in-law that was, people say sponsor. She was my person that I could call when I was down and out or, had situations. And to be quite honest, I actually went and stayed with my brother and my sister-in-law because the apartment I was staying in, the government assisted apartment, had too many memories attached to it. And so it was just bringing up too much emotional. Sure. Yeah. So I literally had to take myself out of that environment and put myself in a different environment, and so that's what I did.
Okay. And then after you live with your brother-in-law, and when did you go to Habitat for Humanity?
I went to Habitat. I was about a year or so clean. I'm not one that keeps up on timelines because I was just focused, living one day at a time, right? But it was about a year or so.
But it was after this, after you'd had your daughter and all that kind of stuff. And then you said, and I don't know this, I was clean for a year or so before I got the worst news a mother could hear when it comes to their little girls.
Right. And so I'm not going to say exactly what it was because it's not my story to tell after thinking about it, and I haven't got my daughter's permission. But I will say this. You don't want to hear the horror story I heard from my daughters, and it's the worst news a mother can hear from their little girls that happened to them. And it would have been very easy to just say, poor pitiful me, I'm trying, I'm doing all these things, I'm doing the right thing, and it's still happening to me, I can't catch a break and all this stuff, but that doesn't do anything.
That was going to be my question. When you get this terrible news, which obviously, reading between the lines, it's horrible. Yeah. How heavy was the temptation to just run right back to the opiates? And, just to escape the thought process.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was heavy. It was for sure heavy.
Did you come close at all?
I halt, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. I stopped dead in my tracks. That's what I taught. That was one of the coping skills I learned. And I stopped and I said, am I hungry? Am I angry and lonely? I was angry. So I took a shovel and hit a tree, and it broke in half on the first swing. And then I took a 2x4 and just started beating the tree to get my anger out first. Because you got to handle that part first,
Okay, walk through that again. I think that's fascinating. So you realize this is a bad spot.
Something's wrong.
And it's HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired.
Yeah.
And you use that to identify what is the emotion that I'm feeling now that's problematic. For you in that moment, I'm angry.
Yeah. And so I handled that. So if I was hungry, I'd eat. If I was lonely, I'd call a friend. If I was tired, I'd take a nap. But I was angry. So I was literally standing on the front porch thinking about shooting people is how angry I was, and I was like, whoa, something's wrong, and so I just started beating a tree until I got all my anger out and I could actually think instead of emotionally thinking. I needed to logically think.
But that's great, though. That's a great coping mechanism for any situation. HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Just stop and realize something's wrong. What is the problem? Am I hungry? No. Am I angry? No. Am I lonely? Yes. Okay, so now to
have some support.
Like once you pinpoint the emotion that you're having a problem with at that time, then you know how to properly
Deal with it.
Deal with it.
Well,
That's great.
Another thing is that so many people that deal with addiction, and I like to say deal with addiction, I don't like calling people addicts necessarily because, once you're an addict, you're always an addict. So I would keep also an emotional color wheel on my refrigerator because it was hard identifying your emotions and what you're feeling for some reason when you're dealing with addiction. And so I'd keep this emotional color wheel on my refrigerator. And whenever I was going through something, I would go to that color wheel and figure out what I was feeling, whether it was one thing, two things, three things. And I would write it down and I'd say, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? And where does it come from? And the where does it come from is the harder part because most of the time it comes from the past or something deeper, know? And I would keep a journal of that. And if the same thing kept popping up and up and up, then I knew, okay, I need to go see a professional or work on it.
But again, you've just shown us two things that everybody can use to cope with any situation when they're between halt and then the stop. What am I feeling and why am I feeling it? And I think writing things down.
Right.
There's something about it's the same thing I've always told people about therapy. And obviously my situation is very different from yours, but there's something about writing it down or just saying the words. Somehow it's like pushing it out of your body in some way that helps you kind of slow down. Okay, now let's slow down. Now that I've said that to someone or I've written it down and I can see it, now it's out of me. Let's figure out how to focus and fix the problem, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, and I'll add one more thing to it. The pictures you see in your head and the words you tell yourself is what happens in your life, I noticed too. So if you're constantly seeing yourself, like when I was actively using, if I was feeling bad, my body, I didn't even want to get off the couch to use the restroom when I was in so much pain because I didn't have my drug, And so I would literally, picture myself, oh, I'm in pain. I feel, just keep growing and telling myself how bad I felt. And then I would picture myself, getting a hold of, a dealer and getting drugs and how much better I'd feel. I told myself how much better I feel. I'd have the energy. I wouldn't feel, and it just becomes real, So you really have to pay attention to the pictures you see in your head and the words you tell yourself at all times.
So then what really, after this terrible thing happens with your daughters, and it's kind of overwhelming, but you manage to work through that. A big change comes at that point for you. What was it that caused this big change that really kind of helped launch you forward in life?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I was walking around like I wasn't angry at God, that I was fine with him, that I was just praying, asking him to help me, And I realized one day that I was very angry at him. And I just started talking to him like I'm talking to you right now. And it just came out naturally. I mean, I even cursed in my prayer, at him. And I was just talking to him like he was anyone and just telling him, why me? Why, I'm trying my best. I'm doing everything right. I try to be the best mother I can be. And then how could you do this to me? Out of all people, da-da-da-da. And I just went off. And I just went completely off. No one, if they would have heard me, thought I was talking to God. That is for sure. And then it was like, the heavens opened and everything changed in my life. It just one thing after another. I remember going to a doctor's office and listening to a group therapy session with people that were dealing with addiction. And I thought, my God, if I was in that room, that would make me want to use, So I just so happened to email the doctor and tell her my opinions and thoughts. And that led me to getting a job there. So I started working in a substance abuse field at that point. It was just one thing after another.
But how about that? There you went from just a few years. What was the time difference from when you decided to stop using to when you ended up working at a facility?
Yeah, I would say about 4 years, maybe 3 years, something like that. Yeah.
So within 3 to 4 years, you go from running scams to steal chainsaws to sell for money and that type of stuff to you're in this facility. And the irony couldn't be lost on you. Like, what am I doing?
Yeah, it was crazy. I was just working as the receptionist at that time. And then.
But you were there.
Yeah, I was
there. You were
there.
still there.
I was definitely in there. Mm-hmm.
And were you beginning to feel those emotions then that you had envisioned for yourself? And really, obviously, you're not all the way there yet,
right?
But you began to feel that sense of pride and that hope and all those things,
right? Yeah, and it just made my vision come even stronger. and want to help people even more. And I would relate to the patients related to me because they knew I experienced it. So they don't, people don't want to, people that are dealing with addiction don't really care to talk with someone that's never dealt with it before because they don't think they understand it,
Right.
And so I could make a connection and I could see the difference I was making in people's life. So it just grew even more.
That's an interesting point, though. Talking to someone who has experienced in some fashion, because it's different for everybody, but talking to someone who's experienced whatever it is you're dealing with. Yeah,
Right.
it's key. I'm no good as a drug counselor because I've never used drugs.
Yeah.
But by the same token, I was just thinking as you were saying that, I can't imagine sitting and talking to somebody, having someone who's never lost a child say to me, well, here's what you got to do.
Yeah,
I was like,
that's insane.
Slow down. You have no idea what I'm going through on a
Yeah.
day-to-day basis these days. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great point. So then you're the receptionist. And now you're doing all of these other things. How did you bridge the gap? What started the process of moving forward into actually counseling and working with people individually?
Yeah, I definitely wanted to be a counselor and help people, but the psychiatrist there started talking to me about becoming a peer support specialist and what I had to do. And then so I just started making the next steps going towards that. And then substance abuse counselor, you have to have 6,000 hours, and I trained underneath her. She was psychiatrist, and she was over me. So I just did the work, creative action, get it done.
I'm fascinated by that because the vision, I guess, is the thing that I've hung on to, because it's so opposite of, in many ways, the way I deal with things. It's almost like when I play golf, I see all the time watching professional golfers, they say, well, I look at the shot and I envision where I want the shot to be and what the shot looks like when it's successful. And which is kind of what you're talking about, except I always look at things the opposite, like, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen? Let's prepare for that.
Yeah.
And then anything else that happens after that is like a bonus. I'm a prepare for the worst, hope for the best kind of guy.
Yeah.
And no matter what I always expect to do well at things, but I just don't understand. It's like understanding that shot. I don't understand what they see when they look at their golf shot. Like, I know, okay, I'd like to put it in the middle of the fairway, but odds are it's not going to. So we'll do the best we can here with it. Like, that's the person that I am. I have a hard time envisioning total success in that thing.
Yeah,
You know?
our minds are very powerful, and it does what it thinks you want it to do. So, like I tell people, if you say, "Oh, I'm tired. I wish I had a week off to just relax and enjoy," and then you'll end up with the flu in the bed.
Yeah.
Because that's what you told yourself that you needed.
So you are working for a company now.
Harmony Recovery Group.
8 facilities for substance abuse and mental health. You work with hospitals around North and South Carolina, working with patients, bringing them into treatment, helping them through that treatment. You run 3 IOP houses. It was just intensive outpatient work, helping others help themselves through sharing your story and your experiences and let them know, hey, it can be done. Look at me. I'm doing it.
Yes, absolutely.
All of your visions have come true.
Yeah, they have. Yeah.
Let me read something. I'm going to read you something that Evie wrote at the end of her note to me. It says, now remember, a minute ago we were talking about when you lived on government assistance apartments, food stamps, Medicaid, everything, all alone. And she said, now I don't worry about money and how I'm going to pay my bills. I'm a homeowner. I have a wonderful fiance. I won't say where you have a house, but it's on the lake. You have I'm a homeowner on the lake. I have a wonderful fiance. Both of my children's fathers are clean and have a relationship with God. My 2 teenage girls are perfect and growing into themselves as individuals. I know who I am and what I want in life.
Right. Yeah.
It's an unbelievable story.
Yeah.
How often do you look back and think, this is not that long ago?
I look back every time I talk to patients about my story. If I walk into a hospital, I tell them who I am and what I do. And I say, do you know what a peer support specialist is? And they say no. And I say, well, a peer support specialist is someone that deals with addiction or mental health. And I've dealt with both, and I tell them about my story. And
I'm going to say how strong. Do you ever have any more? Is there ever that doubt or that urge ever come like, yeah, it's been long enough. I probably could.
Hell no.
Okay.
If you handed me $100,000 and said, do this pill, I'll give you $100,000, I'd say, no way.
I ask because I know a guy who hasn't had a drink since 1989. Very successful guy. And I asked him that same thing, and he says, no, his wife will have wine and all that. He says, it's in my house. He goes, I've just established the fact that, 2 sips of wine is going to lead to, I could have a glass. He goes, and next thing you know, I'm like, you know what? Let's just get some Coke. He goes, and you're like, you're off the rails at that point. And that's an interesting thing to me.
I know what that life gave me, and I don't want that life. It's not for me, and it's not for anybody that I love surrounding me.
You wrote at the end of your note to me, you wrote, who am I? What do I want? Is that important for people to put that down on paper, to look at, no matter what it is they're going through, whether you're experiencing a divorce and you feel like you're at the bottom of the barrel, or you're trying to kick drugs or alcohol, or just experiencing grief, like I've been going through in the past year? Is it important to understand, okay, who am I today, and what do I want, and what do I want to be?
I think it's 2 of the most important questions anyone can ask themselves. You need to know who you are and what's your purpose, or what are you here for? Because if you don't know those 2 things, then you're just kind of lost. If you don't have a purpose, what do you have?
So those 2 things to think about, and we'll talk about it more in a second. Who am I, and what do I want? Next.
There's more of the new Ace at Large podcast next.
Hey, it's Ace, and right now when you bundle Killingsworth's termite protection with pest control, you can save over $200 a year. Visit them at thebiggreenk.com. And remember, your family and home are Killings worth it.
Welcome back to the new Ace at Large podcast.
Sometimes you do this, and I'm still relatively new to doing this form of the Ace at Large podcast, but I get excited about the possibility of how good something could be and how impactful it could be for people. And I hope that when we're going to have someone on, that it's going to have weight, and it's going to have merit, and it's going to be something that I feel at the conclusion of that particular podcast is going to help people. I could not be more thrilled with the story today that we've shared with everybody. It's a phenomenal story of what you've overcome to be where you are today, and how you're moving forward in life. And remember that thing she talked about just a second ago. Who am I? What do I want? To me, there are a couple of things that jump out of this today, because we're all experiencing different things and going through different things. And I think whether it's drugs, alcohol that you're trying to overcome, grief, loss, divorce, whatever, there were a couple of things you said today that I thought were pretty important. One, when you told your dad, hey, I've got a drug problem and I'm looking for help. The fact that you told someone who would hold you accountable, not just one of your friends who was using also, that was a bold step to put yourself out there like that. But I think that's important for people. I thought when you said you kind of cut your losses and opened up and got really honest about whether it was with yourself and with God about how you felt, and you were angry, and you kind of got that out of your system, that seemed to be a big turning point for you.
Right.
And I think that whatever you're dealing with, wherever you're sitting at this moment, and you say, okay, now, who am I and what do I want? That's probably, to me, as important as anything else, the visualizing your future and who you want to be and what you want to be, what type of person you want to be,
right,
so that you have that to latch onto and know, oh, every day I'm taking this step toward being the person I want to be.
Right.
That seems like it would be huge for whatever it is we may be experiencing. How would somebody contact you if they were looking for, if they said, this is me, this person can help me, this person, I'm supposed to be listening to this podcast right now? What do they do?
Sure. Well, I work for Harmony Recovery Group. We actually have 2 facilities in Charlotte and 3 in Florida, 2 in Tennessee, 1 in Massachusetts, and building 1 in New Jersey right now. But I can help anyone, anywhere in all states, whether you have insurance or no insurance. one way or another, I can help you get to where, help you help yourself. Let's just say that. My email is eparrott@harmonyrecoverygroup.com, and Parrott's Parrott. And you can contact me on Facebook at Evie, Evie Parrott, and that's the same with Instagram as well.
Okay. And you're okay if anybody wants to just reach out and say, hey, I'm having a problem.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Can you help me?
Mm-hmm.
It's a wonderful story. And I appreciate you for not only reaching out and being willing to share, but doing such a fantastic job at sharing the details.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Your stories. Clearly, you've done this many times.
Actually, not on the podcast. Never like this, but God's with you everywhere.
It's one. Thank you so much for being a part of our radio family and for being willing to share, because I think what you've shared today is really helpful to people. There has never been, to me, a better example since we started doing this. I've tried to reinforce this point every week. There has never been a better example of the saying that my wife gave me to share with you than this today. That one day you will tell your story of how you've overcome what you're going through now, and it will become someone else's survival guide. Hopefully, I pray that's what today has been for anyone who's a part of the Ace at Large podcast family. God bless. Hang in there. We'll see you next week.
This is the new Ace at Large podcast. The new Ace at Large podcast will be back next Thursday.